Hello and welcome back to the talking point here on the Rangers Review with me, Chris Jack, and Stevie Clifford. Stevie, how are we?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Interesting discussion this morning, I think. I was trying to see how I would word that, but yeah. It's never dull, is it? So this is another thing to discuss in the world of Rangers, which isn't on the actual football.
No, it's one that we've had the idea for a couple of weeks, and a topic that I think we're both had the idea to discuss. Given events and appointments at Rangers, it now makes sense to get into it. I'm sure you're all now fully aware of the news that Nils Koppen has been appointed as the club's new technical director. The club statement confirmed that he will now oversee responsibility for the performance of the men's academy, medical, football operations, performance and analysis departments, as well, of course, as his previous role overseeing the Rangers transfer strategy. I think the academy part of that, Stevie, is something that has been a talking point for, no pun intended there, of for quite some time. Obviously, that particular area of the club going through its own changes, given the departure of Seb Jacobs. He only lasted about a season or so in that role. David McCallum has been heading up the academy on an interim basis over recent months. And I think because of other issues at the club, mostly focus on the manager and the first team, focus on the boardroom, chairman, chief exec, the academy situation has almost fallen down the pecking order. But it's very, very important for the football club financially, very important for the club on the pitch as well. If we start on Coppin and the kind of wider picture in terms of his appointment, are you happy enough with Niels having his remit expanded to include the academy and also those other areas as outlined?
um, I was surprised,
Mm-hmm.
surprised, and let me just break this down slightly because there is context to this feeling. A year ago, Niels Koppen was a scout at PSV, and a successful one. And I'm not downplaying that. He was part of a lot of really big deals, a lot of really big moves in and out the club, and I think that's totally fair. I think that's fair to say. We recruited him, and he enjoyed a step up into the role of head of recruitment. So that's already a bit of a jump up. It's already a promotion for him. It's already him doing more. It's already him expanding his horizons and things like that. And I'm all right. I'm comfortable with that because that role, you were always maybe going to have to get somebody established, which is really difficult, or you've taken up and come or somebody that's showing, the ability to spot these players and do these deals, etc., etc. So I was quite happy with that. But that was barely 10 months ago, 11 months ago. And all of a sudden, he's went from that and one window, Chris, just one, where it's debatable how successful that will be. And we're not going to find out until the season's end because for every Baron and Jeffy, you've got Proper and Cortez. So there's still question marks. And again, I think that's fair. I think it's legitimate concerns. We don't know wider how he's going to perform. For example, James Bisgrove, when he went from commercial to CEO, was in commercial for 3 years, 4 years, and you saw a steady increase in revenue, business deals, partnerships. So you understood it, even if you didn't agree with it. You saw a 3-year development plan, and we thought to ourselves, right, okay, I understand the move. But for Nils Koppen, we haven't seen that. In 2 years' time, if Jeffy moves on for 10 million and Connor Barron moves on for 6, 7, 8 million, and we start to see this business model, everybody would then go, yeah, I think that appointment and a progression for him is worthy. And I think it's not a big deal. And they would probably welcome it. At the moment, it's went down like a lead balloon because everybody's like, why is this necessary? Why are we doing it at this point? We don't have a CEO. We don't have a chairman. And the word that I keep coming back to is it's unnecessary. It's not an appointment that needed to be made. It's not an appointment that needed to be made public. They could have waited. They could have waited 2-3 months until a chairman and a CEO was in. They could have then come out and said, look, this is what we really want to do. This is what we think is right for the club. Nils has shown great appetite, everything else, blah, blah, blah. Chairman and CEO really like it. We're tying down that side of the operation. And everybody would have went, cool, okay, that makes sense. No problem. But now it just seems like, why are we doing this? It's unnecessary. And I don't know if that's fair, Chris. It's not nothing against Koppen himself. Excuse me. I think Koppen, excuse me. I think Koppen may actually be guilty, or not guilty of, actually be unfortunate that he's in a position where he's maybe getting the feelings of the fans for other things that are going on and not necessarily him. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
I think you've summed it up well there. I think he's not the lightning rod here. He may feel like it, but I don't think he should feel like it. I think any dissatisfaction with his role being expanded, it's not expanded slightly. This is a fairly significant changing of his remit. It's not just a case of, well, he was doing first team recruitment. He's now doing first team recruitment and academy recruitment. He's covering a lot of bases there, and as you outlined there, a lot of bases that he does not have huge experience or a huge track record or huge success in. And I think that feeds into it's the Rangers' way to promote and hope that people can step up, when previous seasons we've seen that is not necessarily a good way to go down. So I do understand why the fans are a bit concerned about this, why they don't, like you. I think a lot of people feel it's unnecessary, but I don't think it's a case of being too harsh on Nils as a person. It's just him that finds himself in that situation. So to have his remit expanded in that way, so to now include the academy as we're going to focus on, it's an area that he may well have great ideas for. He may well be a guy who can bring in new people, who can bring in new processes. He spoke in his RTV interview yesterday, when this was announced. He spoke about being a productive academy that brings players through to the first team. He says there is good work needing done, but they can't be satisfied with the general output. I think that's a feeling a lot of fans will share. He spoke about having to improve that, to make steps on that, to create a pathway. That great youth development buzzword of pathway, spoke about creating room for their own academy players, was how he phrased it. You see more of the B team than me. You're more aware of these players and where they're at. How would you sum up where the B team is, where the youth structure is? Are the players there, or are there concerns about the actual quality of youth player that Rangers have at that level?
I think there's more qualified people than me, in terms of there's people that go and see them at all levels, 15s, 16s, 18s, B team, etc. What I would say is, from what I've seen, I think the quality is there, but it's how do you judge it? Because I've seen Alex Lowry do incredible things for the B team this year, scored a couple of tremendous goals, and he's not even the standout player, but he's shown flashes in the first team of how good he can be. The standout players I've seen Yanis Hadji and Danilo in the B team, for example, at Stenhouse Muir, and they're not the standouts. The standouts are the young kids, your Huttons at fullback, your Webster at centre half, Paul and Seal, and Bailey Rice in the middle, Finlay Curtis, Archie Stevens, Zach Lovelace. The quality's there, I believe. Mason Munn recently, an exceptional young goalkeeper, recently got a new 4-year deal at 18, which we don't hand out unless we're sure, because the youth team largely, it's year-to-year basis kind of thing. The quality's there. The problem is, and they can go and play in B games and things, and they can beat League One, League Two teams in that easily. I say easily, but they can beat them. They've beaten Clyde, they've beaten Stenhousemuir this year convincingly. And I don't think that's unfair to say that their level is slightly above that. I would love to see Rangers be in the Championship, playing Falkirk, playing Ayr United, playing Livy, Queen's Park and things. How would they survive on a week-to-week basis against your Hamiltons, your Airdries and all that kind of stuff? That, for me, would be really interesting. And I would bet that a lot of players would find that to be where and thereabouts. But what Rangers used to be really successful at doing was putting their kids on loan to that kind of level, and that seems to have stopped. And I would love to see Paul Ncio, Bailey Rice, Lovelace, Archie Stevens, Finlay Curtis, all these guys that are grabbing the headlines, Hutton, Webster, Munn, etc. I would love to see all them go down to that level, get solid loans, get partnerships, and see if they are progressing. Because the question, what is the level like? The level's good. The football, by the way, it's worth pointing out, McCallum and Malky Stevens, David McCallum and Malky Thompson, rather, have got them playing incredibly good football. It's attractive, it's fast, it's attacking, it's aggressive, and it's brilliant to watch. And I don't know if, I'm seeing that and I'm enjoying it because we're not seeing it in the first team, or it actually is as good as I think it is, and the football level is good. So, do I think the players are good enough? Yeah, I think they are. I think when you look at Finlay Curtis getting 60 goals over 2 seasons, that's not a fluke. I seen him at Stenhousemuir run rings around their defence. Could have 3 or 4. He outshone Hadji by, and Hadji, obviously, a bit of a training game for him. I understand it completely. He's not going to go out full force. But he was very much in the shadow of kids that day. Lovelace on the left, Pace to Burn, etc. But I don't see what the manager sees every day in training. I don't see what these players would be like physically coming into the first team, because there's a massive gap. It's all right playing against men of lower league where they've been out at work all day, etc. How are you going to plan to play against, solid pros and things? It's a different world, so I get that. Understand it completely, but I think a lot of players in our B team will make a good living out of football. What level? I'm not sure. With us, I'm not sure. But what I do know is that I think that the brand of football being played is expansive, it's attacking, playing good stuff. And I wouldn't mind seeing a lot more of them involved in the squad. I would much rather see Bailey Rice or Finlay Curtis or Zach Lovelace, no offence, than Kieran Dowell or Yanis Hadji or somebody that maybe isn't long-term Rangers quality or long-term in Rangers plans. And I don't believe that they players are. I don't believe they're getting used enough. I believe there's too much wages getting spent on them, Chris, when we could have younger players coming in and kind of coming up. So I'd be interested to see how Koppen, it's a major thing for Koppen actually. How do you fill the void between that level and the first team level when there's no reserve level? We need to somehow fix that. Now, people have been talking about that for what seems like 4 or 5 years. It's now time for somebody to fix it. And we can play as many B-team glamour head-to-head clashes as we want. They're glorified friendlies. It's never going to be the same match day experience the boys get from playing Challenge Cup games or a league game here. Now, the Lowland League wasn't their level. I get that completely. But what's stopping this league from getting a reserve league back up? If you don't want to be in it, don't be in it. That's not a problem. But surely, of the 40 teams that are in Scotland, there's enough to get 10 of them to say we want to play reserve football. And we can take B team games, and Rangers will take a couple of hundred fans everywhere they go. So I think there's a level there, Chris. And what I would ask you is, before I ask you, I want to ask you a wee bit about what Koppen said, but what I want to ask you on that and what I've just said is, how do you see that bridge getting gapped? What can Koppen do to fix the bit between the B level and the first team and that void that nobody's been able to fix? because that must be up there in his remit as being one of the biggest things.
And I think it's one of the biggest things for him, but it's probably not something that he as an individual or even Rangers as a club can actually solve. I had a piece on the site a couple of weeks ago. I think it was probably during the last international break, actually, looking at where the academy is, potentially where it's heading, and some of the issues that they have faced. You outlined some of them there. Lowland League was not fit for the purpose that Rangers needed it for. They tried to implement the Conference League, which would have given them given the SPFL another level, given teams a potentially higher level to play their young players at. Didn't get off the ground. Teams didn't fancy it. And there's a couple of points I make in that piece. Craig Mulholland, then head of academy, Stuart Robertson, then managing director, produced a number of papers and a number of spreadsheets and slideshows and productions to go around the clubs and say, this is what we believe is right for the next generation of Scottish football. This is how we believe we can bridge that gap, as you say, between there and there. This is how we think it should work. A couple of the clubs didn't even pick up the phone and come back to them. A number of the clubs that they went and spoke to, they presented to, they may have liked it, but the feeling of it's going to benefit Rangers, so therefore it's a hard sell for us and we'll not bother. We'll just stick with the status quo. Completely missing the point, completely missing the opportunity. And I don't think that for all the faults at Rangers over recent seasons, and we've discussed them on and off here often enough, I don't think you can criticise the club for not trying. They may not have succeeded, but I don't think you can criticise them for not at least trying different things at youth level. Now, as you say, most of these games that the boys are playing, they're not really fit for purpose. They're not doing what they need them to do. But until Scottish football wants to change, then how do Rangers go about changing that? And that's a big problem for them. Because you look at, people always say the talent is there. You've just said yourself, the talent is there at lower levels. They always say there's a player there. No, this boy's got a chance. At some stage, those players are going to have to make a choice. Do I stay at Rangers when I know this is the games programme I'm going to have at 16, 17, 18? This is the chance I'm going to have. Or do you go down south? Again, in that piece, I outline the opportunities that younger players are getting. Take Rory Wilson, for example, going to Aston Villa, playing Premier League 2. If you do well in Premier League 2, there's cup competitions, there's European competitions. There are so many other different avenues that young players, yes, you're going into a system that's getting millions of pounds thrown at it, that's got the best players from all over the world, but you're getting an opportunity to go and test yourself, to go and try and improve yourself. Up here, if you're a really promising 16, 17-year-old at Rangers, do you want to spend the next 2-3 seasons bouncing around on a Tuesday night playing, with all respect, Stenhousemuir or Clyde in the Trust Trophy? Do you want to play Huddersfield at the training ground, or do you want to actually play games that have got crowds, that have got slightly more pressure, that have got points on and points at stake? And that's a big issue. It's Rangers will always produce players. They will always be able to attract the best young players in Scotland. Will they be able to hold on to them when that pathway, to use the buzzword, if that pathway is just not there, because at 18, 19, the games programme's not there. By the time you get to 19, 20, 21, do you then get a chance in the first team when you're having to go from a level that's down there to playing Champions League qualifiers, to playing Old Firm games, to playing cup finals? It's just too big a gap. And for all Rangers' efforts, they just haven't been able to succeed themselves or collectively to actually find a solution to that, unfortunately.
And what about his comments about former players maybe coming back at this level and helping out? The most obvious one for me is Kevin Thompson. And I was already accused of it yesterday, saying, "Oh, that's your pal. You just want him to get a job." He's been on your pod. He's been on pods with you and all that. Kevin Thompson's never done a podcast with me, so I found that quite funny. I'm a friendly with Kev, a wee bit, but he seems like the most obvious candidate to me. Mm-hmm. Kevin Thompson out there. When we talk about former players, you've got Barry Ferguson, you've got maybe Maurice Ross, who's currently, I think, working with Charlie Adam down at Fleetwood and things like that. So I'm not sure he would be viable. But Ross and Thompson are the kind of guys that I would like to see involved in our academy. When he talked about that, are you encouraged by that? Is there any names that you would like to see?
I think the Kevin Thompson one was the first one that probably, when I was going through Niels' interview and I watched it, as soon as he said that and he spoke about having that Rangers DNA, I think was how he phrased it, but having people that have got that experience. And I know people will say it's jobs for the boys, it's an easy, just because you played for the club doesn't mean to say you know about youth development or you know about other aspects of it. But Rangers is a very unique football club, it's a very unique operating environment. Having that experience, and not just have played for the club, but during successful times, having won things, people that know the standards, that can uphold the standards, that know the history, that want to make new history. I don't think you can have enough people like that round about the club. It's people that understand Rangers, that make Rangers different, that can make Rangers special. And whether that's in hospitality suites or whether it's as head of academy, whether it's on a match day, just being in and around the fan zone at Edmiston House, or whether it's being a club ambassador to go and do events, Rangers should have as big a pool of former players involved as possible. I think it's something they have gone back to the last couple of seasons. Obviously, Barry has got that role. Minnow Jig has got an ambassadorial role. John Brown's also still involved. Marvin Andrews is involved. You need as many guys like that in and around it as possible. But then you have someone like Kevin Thompson, who clearly has had success in a coaching capacity, did very well at Kelty. I'm amazed that he's not been picked up by another club since he left Kelty. Why he's continually overlooked for jobs, I'm not quite sure. I think he speaks really well, knows the game, is hugely passionate about youth development, still got his own academy as well. So I think if Niels was looking for a former player to come in and fulfil an academy role, for me, Kevin Thompson would be the obvious one. But I think having guys like him, Stevie Smith is obviously involved there. I think having people like that, they've got that affinity, that they've got the understanding of what Rangers is and what makes Rangers. I think that's certainly an encouraging thing, and something that they should be looking at. I also think something else they should be looking at, which is again something that Niels has touched on, and something I wanted to ask you about. The plan to sign a Scottish talent, as they phrase it. For me, you have to pick up the best of what's round about you. Whether that's at academy level, we saw the club do that a couple of seasons ago. Was it under 18 squad? I think they invested quite heavily in, maybe 2 summers ago. Went and signed a number of players. I think one's coming from Aberdeen, some from Motherwell from memory. Rangers should be a big enough draw to attract players at that level. You then go up a level, and I know we discussed it over the summer. Someone like Watson at Killie, Lennon Miller is obviously the obvious one. Should that have been done before now? Because now look at it, Rangers perhaps priced out of the Lennon Miller market. He will have suitors that will offer more than Rangers. Are you a fan of going down that route and saying we should be signing the best of what's available to give the team? I think it's important the club has a Scottish spine, a Scottish identity about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. Lennon Miller will get to a wee bit, but there is, we talked about Conor Barron. Myself and Derek on the morning show started talking about Conor Barron this time last year, and I was talking about going to get him, and he's available. And Lyle Cameron's coming up from Dundee, who I think's in the same boat. You've got Watson at Kilmarnock. There's a couple at Dundee United that actually are making a wee bit of waves that look quite exciting. I think that you could pick up some players from the Scottish market that might not be fashionable, but would do a job in this league. And you would get a far lot more out of somebody like that than you would of paying $5.5 million for Ridvan Yilmaz, 20 odd grand a week, and him never being fit or robust enough to play in our league, when you've already got left backs and things that can play in front of him anyway. I think that this is where we fall short. If Jeffy is your project and is your left back and he's going to play most games, we don't need somebody of Yilmaz's calibre not being fit and things for us. Would I then go and pick up somebody in the Scottish League? And I've got a few in mind that I wouldn't mention because people will ridicule it. But there's steadfast guys out there who could do the same job that Alex Cleland or Kirk Broadfoot have successfully done in winning Rangers teams. and there was strikers out there who weren't fashionable, who weren't big players, that could have done a better job than having to rely on one guy because the others aren't fit at the start of the season. You could pay them small wages and you could make up and do the same type of jobs that your Billy Dodges and things have done in successful Rangers teams in the past. So yes, I do think we miss a trick with that, Chris. I think that when it comes to Lennon Miller, you asked, has he been priced out of that move at £4 million? The answer is no, because we're spending $4 million on Bayrami, Diamandi and Cortez. And those are big deals for Rangers. The question I've got about signing somebody like Lennon Miller is, would we waste his talent by him coming here and we don't help him fulfill? And I wanted to ask you a wee bit about something that you've done on the likes of King and Lowry and things, and not being able to find domesticated loans down south for them, where they're going to lower leagues in England and that, which is more competitive, which has got the higher kind of competitiveness. That's the word I'm looking for. Almost escaped me there. But I think that's a route to go down as well, which we should be looking at. Surely there's a team we could approach down south and get a link up and get that kind of thing.
I think the King and the Lowry ones are really interesting examples, because for several seasons before they even got to the first team level, they were spoken about as, now these boys, they've got something, they're slightly different, they are better than what else is in that age group, these boys have got a real chance, and it's just not quite happened for them. And you mentioned Lennon Miller there, would Rangers ruin him? It sounds quite a harsh question to ask, but you have to say, if you're him, would you sign for Rangers right now? Because you just know how young players are treated, for want of a better word. You know the opportunities they get. You look at King and Lowry, it's just not quite happened for them. Would you, as one of the best young players in Scotland right now, would you go to Rangers, or would you look at Doig or Ferguson and say, actually, I'm going to go to Italy, I'm going to take my chances in Spain? Would you look at someone like Billy Gilmour and say, I'm going to go down in England and I'll make a career there for myself? I'm not convinced that Rangers right now are the draw that they should be, because we've seen too many young players, talented players, just not get that opportunity. It's one thing for a club to say, we believe in youth players, we want to invest in the academy, we'll invest in players, we'll give players a chance. It's quite easy to say, it's easy to put on a PowerPoint and say, this is the Rangers vision. It's another thing to actually do it, and too often Rangers don't do it. You pointed to Ridvan there, other players within this squad, basically taking a wage and taking a squad space that should be put towards someone like Bailey Rice, should be put towards someone like Leon King in seasons gone by, or Alec Lowry in seasons gone by. And that's a bigger thing for Rangers. At some point, they have to decide, are we just going to pay lip service almost to the academy, or are we actually going to do it properly? If we're going to do it properly, we have to have squad spaces and opportunities there for these young players. We have to prove that we will give chances, we will give game time, we will put faith in them. Or are we just going to say it because you can tick a box and say, well, we've got a wonderful facility up there and we've got X number of coaches, we've got X number of players and X number of youth internationalists and all the rest of it. What they say and what they do, for me, they don't really line up at academy level right now. And I think that's a bigger question. Certainly one for Nils now in this role. It's a question for the chairman and the board. It's a question for whoever the chief exec is going to be. If they go down the sporting director route, it's a question for him. Certainly one for the new head of academy. And together they have to decide what Rangers are. Are they fully focused on the first team and they put everything into that, or will they actually invest and get whatever benefits they can, football and financial wise, out of the academy up there?
Because I was going to say, I remember the days gone by where we used to bring through kids, your likes of your kind of your Hagans, your Presleys, your McSwiggins and stuff like that. And even if they didn't make it, you would get £700,000-800,000 and move these boys on. Mm-hmm. We need a manager that's willing to do that, so that the academy can almost start paying for itself. All those names that I mentioned at the start, your Lovelaces, your Curtises, your NCOs, Websters, Hutton, Archie Stevens, all of the boys that I mentioned, we should be able to, if we can't offer them, we should be able to offer them a platform somewhere where they're playing football at a level where we can then recycle them if they're not making it was and go, yeah, if you want to pick him up, it's £250,000. And deals like that is what we're missing also, Chris, just as a kind of... It was interesting what you were saying there. I think that kind of brought that in nicely.
No, I think as always, we get to the end of these shows and realise that we could go on for so much longer because there's just so many other different aspects to get into. I'm sure this is a topic that will come back around at some point in the future, and it's really interesting to see what impact Nils Koppen can have as technical director. As always, if you like what we do here on the Talking Point, if you like what we do here on the YouTube channel, please like the channel, subscribe, and of course, if you like what we do on the website, the best way to support the work of all of us, myself, Stevie, Derek, Josh, and everything that goes into it, take out a subscription to the Rangers Review website. All your help, feedback, subscriptions, all greatly appreciated. As always, most of my appreciation, as always, goes to Stevie. Thanks for your time.
No, mate, thank you. It's funny because we could go on and talk about it for a long time, but when we do our next show, we'll have done a cup final, we'll have done AGMs, we'll have done a league run, European games, so we won't be without topics to discuss, that's for sure. And it would just be nice if we could just be positive and discuss something good for the club. That would be wonderful.
There is the hope for us also. Everyone, once again, thanks for your time as always, and we will see you again soon.